Creed 3 is a violent tragedy. Let's talk about it. Creed 3 is Michael B. Jordan's first project as director, as well as another film written by Ryan Coogler. If you've seen my most anticipated movies list, you know that I was really looking forward to Creed 3, especially because of Ryan Coogler's involvement, as well as looking forward to Michael B. Jordan showing what he has to offer in a director role, rather than just as like an actor or a producer. And I gotta say, I was really not that impressed. Creed 3 does continue the story of Adonis Creed, the son of Apollo Creed, if you're not familiar with the continuing of the Rocky verse from Rocky all the way to Creed 2, and now Creed 3. The story of Creed 3 is pretty simple. Adonis is now in retirement and facing what new struggles come with that, as well as meeting up with a new friend in Damien Anderson, an old friend from his youth, and conflict ensues in both an emotional sense as well as, of course, in a physical sense, as this is a boxing movie. And one thing that really stuck out to me as I was watching this film is that this film has some amazing scenes and sequences. I mean, some shots in here are legitimately wallpaper-worthy material. There are some really beautiful scenes. That's one of the only pros that I can really come away with this thinking like, that's really, really good, or that's really strong. Everything else ranges from mid to honestly kind of upsetting and disappointing. I was really looking forward to a strong plot, a really strong narrative, as well as really strong characters, especially due to the acting presence of Michael B. Jordan, as well as Jonathan Majors being here, and as well as the writing staff being led by Ryan Coogler. I was really hoping for a strong film here, but they just did not deliver what I was expecting. I felt that the characters were overly flat. While Michael B. Jordan and Tessa Thompson do a good job in their dynamics, I feel like overall any kind of emotional tension just didn't hit me as hard as it should have, or how it felt, or I felt it should have. And I feel like Jonathan Majors' Damien Anderson just felt like a wet fart. And I mean that in the sense that you know that he's there and you know that he's a presence, but you still don't like it, and not in a good way. He's not a villain that you just love to hate. He's a villain that just seems very underdeveloped and unsatisfying. And I don't know, for me, most of this film just did not land outside of those beautiful shots. And it felt like it really could not hold my attention as strong as I was hoping for it to be. Now, during boxing scenes, I'm in there and I'm drawn into the film, as again, there are some amazing sequences, and the fights here are done really, really well. They do some cool things during the fights to really play into like the mental aspect, as well as the emotional toll that these characters go through as they're in the fights. And I feel like that's all really well done. However, the movie as a whole really suffers from pacing. I feel like this is one of the most worst paced movies I have seen all year. And I saw Cocaine Bear, and that was pretty rough as well. First act of this film takes forever to get through, and it feels like a slog. And from the second act on, it feels like this movie is moving at breakneck speeds. I'm talking, you better hold your head like this or else you're gonna get whiplash. This movie moves so fast in the second half, and I feel like that's a big contributing factor to, one, the emotional payoffs between characters not really having that impact that you'd really hope that they feel, as well as the villain here really falling flat for me. I did not enjoy Jonathan Majors' portrayal of Damien here, only because the setup was just not enough. Especially when you're pulling someone from someone's past, you need a lot of that setup, and it just wasn't present. So after all those emotions are out, I feel like this movie is going to be rated as mid. And while it's not terrible, there are some redeeming qualities that I did enjoy, such as those good shots, strong fight scenes. But even though the conflict looked nice, it didn't feel very strong like behind it. You know what I'm saying? Like I just wasn't invested in anything here. And so yeah, those are my thoughts. I would say if you're into boxing movies, go see it, right? It's a predictable film and you're gonna walk out not overly thrilled. But if you are a big fan of Michael B. Jordan, Ryan Coogler, or Jonathan Majors, Tessa Thompson, and the star-studded cast that is here, then I recommend going and see the film, because it's not a terrible movie. You're gonna walk out going, that's okay. Because that's what a mid movie is, right? But if you're not overly invested in the Creed series or even the Rockyverse as a whole, right? The Rockyverse. It feels so weird saying Rockyverse now that there's like the MCU. It feels like a dirty word. Like no one wants to, like you don't want to be attached to just like X-verse. But in my opinion, I feel like waiting for this to come out on streaming or seeing this at home or renting it is a wiser way to spend your money rather than seeing this in theater, because you will overpay for popcorn, just as everybody always does, and the movie's just not worth that price of admission, I don't think. So with that being said, let's get into the numbers and see just where this movie falls on my own numeric scale. So numbers for nerds. Cinematic was a 9 out of 10. Like I said, this movie is very beautiful and has some great sequences. Character was a 7. While there are some weak characters, I did enjoy the characters of Michael B. Jordan and Tessa Thompson. Even though they were pretty weak, they were still enjoyable to watch on screen. However, Damien, not so much. Conflict was a 6 out of 10. That is because the conflict here is so contrived and I did not enjoy it. However, it is filmed and beautifully shot. I felt like that felt more in with a cinematic feeling though. Dialogue was a 5. There is really nothing special here. The only sequence of dialogue here that I felt was special at all was in the middle of the movie. There's a scene that involved Adonis and his mother and they talk. That's a nice piece of dialogue. Outside of that, everything here is pretty plain. Plot was a 6 out of 10. This movie requires a ton of suspension of disbelief. And without that, you just gotta hate it. Suspense was a 7 out of 10 though. Again, this is a looker. And even though I gave Suspense a 7, I do think I'm being a little bit lenient. This movie is a looker. It looks nice, but outside of that, there's really nothing to like just hold your attention, because the stakes don't really feel that strong. That brings the total up to a 7 out of 10. Now, while I did rate this movie a 7 out of 10, I could very much see the argument being made that this is a 6 out of 10, or even a 5 out of 10. But honestly, I'm a big fan of like strong music sequences and really well done shots. And I feel like that really elevates this film for me personally and kept me invested. So like I mentioned, suspense here is a very lenient rating. But I mean, that's just my opinion. That's my review. What are you going to do about it? But yeah, that's all that I have to say. I hope that you have enjoyed, and I will see you next week. We're going to be reviewing Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 2, and Scream 6, and maybe more, okay? I have some things that I want to do, but, I mean, we're just going to see what happens. And so I will see you in the next one. Peace.